Welcome back, everybody, to Cynthia's Chinese poetry class. Today, we're going to talk about the genres of Chinese poetry. So, let's first have a look at the menu. The first one we're going to talk about is the pastoral landscape poetry. The second one is the frontier fortress poetry. These two are the main topics of this class. However, the third and fourth one, which are called bold and unconstrained genre and graceful and restrained genre, these two we're going to talk about in our next class. So the first one and the second one, the pastoral landscape, the frontier fortress, these are mainly developed in Tang Dynasty. However, the third and fourth one were developed mainly in Song Dynasty. So let's move on and have a look at the pastoral landscape poetry. First, what is pastoral landscape poetry? As you can tell from the name, it describes the serene and secluded life away from the mundane world. I'm sorry for the spelling mistake here. It should be from the mundane world. Second, it has extensive delineation of nature. So just like our picture here, we have the mountains and waterfalls and two persons standing here to look at the serene view in front of their eyes. And I'm going to say there are two main representatives of this kind of poetry. The first one is Tao Yuanming, the second one is called Xie Lingyun. And we are going to look at Tao Yuanming very carefully in this class. So, who is Tao Yuanming? He is one of the pioneers of the pastoral landscape poetry, and he is also the first poet who wrote extensively on drinking wine. And this characteristic of him is very interesting to me. It's kind of funny. And third, he is an outright and free person who loves the Chinese daisies. And I remember when I was looking at Chinese paintings which depicts him, he is often accompanied by a lot of Chinese daisies. So this became his hobby of picking Chinese daisies. So we will see that in the following poem I'm going to introduce. His most famous work is Peach Blossom Spring, which you might have heard of because it was adapted to a drama. This story is very it has some element of fantasy in it. It tells us about a story of a fisherman who was lost in a place where there's a lot of peach blossoms, and he found a cave and entered it. But when he entered the cave, he found a large place where lived a lot of people, and these people lived agrarian lives, and they plant corns, and they have a close-knit community. They have a lot of cabins. It's just like a little village. The inhabitants in this village welcomed him, and they gave him food, and so they became friends. However, one day, one inhabitant here told him that if he is going to leave this place, please don't tell anyone where we are. But this fisherman, because he just wants his emperor's, maybe he wanted money, so he told the emperor exactly where this village is. So when the emperor and this fisherman and some other people went to look for this village, it magically disappeared. They just couldn't find a way to it again. And in my mind, I think in this short story, the author Tao Yuanming is trying to express his desire for ideal society, which is a village in the story, and he himself is not very sure whether this ideal society exists or would exist in the future of his time. So this is just a brief introduction of this work, and it's kind of interesting. So if if you're interested, just look it up. Tao Yuanming's road for being a government official, which everyone was pursuing back then, was very rugged. So he decided to free himself from the relentless pursuit of power and went back to the pastoral life he loved since childhood. And this poet we talk about looks like this. This picture is kind of cute for me because I kind of like heavy person. So he is actually one of my favorite Chinese poets. And let's look at this poem of his. First, I will read it to you, and you may know what it sounds like. But if you don't understand, don't blame yourself, and I will post my translation of it. So let us begin. 饮酒，晋陶渊明。结庐在人境，而无车马喧。问君何能尔？心远地自偏。采菊东篱下，悠然见南山。山气日夕佳，飞鸟相与还。此中有真意，欲辨已忘言。Here's the translation. Okay, so I will explain to you what this title means. It's not exactly drunkenness. It's actually the meaning of drinking wine. However, I think the author is trying to emphasize the state of drunkenness when he was writing this poem. So I just simply translated it into drunkenness. I built my cabin in a peopled place where there's no boisterous noise of carriages and horses. My friend, you may ask me, how could this be? I'd say the world is tranquil as long as your heart is so. I picked a daisy under the east fence while the South Mountain bumped into my view. The climate is growing tempered in dusk around the mountain, with coupled birds flying away home. I see truth in a life like this, but all the words flee from my tongue when I try to recognize it. So we can see in this poem, he was trying to describe a very serene and tranquil life of being a village, and you can see that he mentioned picking the daisy. He is a great lover of Chinese daisies. So here's the picture of him, accompanied by a lot of Chinese daisies, and this picture is actually developed from this poem. I have a favorite verse here is, I'd say the world is tranquil as long as your heart is so. This is actually the core of this poem, and also the pastoral landscape poetry in China. So this means that whenever you are, as long as your heart feels serene, feels tranquil, the noises around you is actually nothing. So it's our goal to find our tranquilness, to find a sense of balance in our lives. Okay, so we finished the pastoral landscape poetry. We will jump to frontier fortress poetry. I know this will be kind of hard for you, and I will make it very easy. So again, what is frontier fortress poetry? As you can see in this picture, it describes the life in military troops. It was mainly developed in Tang Dynasty, and it has a lot of historical significance because through these poems we can see the military life in Tang Dynasty, and we will add that to the Chinese history. So it gives us a lot of historical clues. And we also have two representatives called Gao Shi and Chen Shen. And in this episode, we will mainly focus on the latter, Chen Shen. So this picture is not very good looking as Tao Yuanming's, and Chen Shen is successfully being elected as a government official, unlike the unlucky Tao Yuanming. However, he was sent to the frontier of China and stayed there for a long time. So he had actually been through a lot too. He's very good at describing the sceneries and lives in the frontier fortresses, which made him a very great frontier fortress poet. And another thing to mention is that he died in Chengdu, where I live now. So I am kind of, feeling special. And it's worth mentioning that another great poet in Chinese history, 杜甫. This one is very famous. I guarantee that almost every one of you have heard of. Actually lived in Chengdu for some time in his life and developed his most famous works here. So here is an example of Chen Shen's poem. And this one I learned in middle school and I loved it a lot. So first I will read it to you. 白雪歌送判官归京，节选，唐，陈森。北风卷地白草折，胡天八月即飞雪。忽如一夜春风来，千树万树梨花开。And because this whole poem is very, very long, so I actually skipped some to the most famous ending. 轮台东门送君去，去时雪满天山路。山回路转不见君，雪上空留马行处。This is the translation. I will read it to you. Okay. Song of the Snow sending Judge Wu back to the capital. In this title, Judge Wu is the poet's very good friend. They are their comrades. Okay, this is very precise. Their comrades when the poet was sent to the frontier fortresses. The north wind breaks the stiffest grass on the ground. The nomad's place snows even in August. Like spring breeze comes overnight, blowing thousands of pear flowers into blossom. When I send you away from the east gate of Luntai, the snow fills the road to Mount Tianshan. I couldn't see your figure as the mountain extended and the footpaths twisted. All that was left was the sign made by a horse on the snow. So there's a sentence I want to explain to you because I had a hard time understanding it when I was learning it. It's this one. Like the spring breeze comes overnight, blowing thousands of pear flowers into blossom. As we can see from the previous sentence, he is describing the snow in Nomad's place, and this sentence is actually describing the snow. It may be a little weird for you because why would somebody use the spring breeze to describe snow? And here, the pear flowers, if you have seen it, it's a kind of white and small flower, and when it blooms, you can see that the trees are filled with this kind of small white flowers, and it feels like snow on the tree. So he's actually using the pear flowers to describe the snow. It's a kind of analogy here. Another verse I want to mention is that all that was left was the sign made by a horse on the snow. It actually expressed a kind of sadness when the poet was departing with his friend. So this is actually a very classical verse. Okay, so here is the end of our class, and I know maybe my class is kind of hard for people who only knows a little about Chinese. So in next class, I will do my best to make it easier. So if you don't understand, I apologize here, and